Hey, everybody. Good evening and welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. It was shaken up Saturday in college football as 8 top 25 teams lost. 5 of the 8 that lost were teams that were unranked. We had some very good games between the 8 clubs that lost. TCU, they edged Texas in a heartbreaker. Obviously, Arkansas edged Mississippi State. That was probably one of the shockers after Mississippi State beat Louisiana State last week. Southern Methodist, sorry to my producer, Wayne, they lost to SMU. And, of course, NC State edged Pitt. Iowa State beat Oklahoma, another close one. And then here's a shocker. Tulsa beat UCF. So, I mean, there it is. And then, of course, our ranked matchups where Texas A&M, they lost to Bama, and Auburn got thumped by Georgia. So welcome, JJ. Welcome, Wayne. Welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports again. Just let you guys know that you can follow us on Twitter at ATL Prime Sports, myself at Corder Todd, JJ at JJ Get You One, and Wayne at RWY Jr. And we've got a great show coming up. Just want to let you guys know we've got Dave Cohen on at 8:10 talking about the Georgia State Panthers and their win over East Carolina. And then we have Evie Van Pelt, publisher of the Rebel Walk. She'll join us at 8:40. Dave will join us at 8:10. We're going to talk about the Braves tonight and their sweep of the Cincinnati Reds. And yes, JJ was right. And God, I hate to say it, but I was wrong. But I'll explain why I was wrong, because we'll give you our predictions on that series later on the show, along with our 6-pack. So I can't wait to do that. JJ and Wayne, how are you this evening?
I've been better.
Doing good. You mentioned it, Shake Up Saturday. There's not even really any reason to get into it in the topic. You mentioned it all. Let's go ahead and break down the games in a second. But, man, you mentioned it all right off the bat. Nothing really.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about these games a little bit when we get into the Shake 'em Up Saturday. I just wanted to mention them right off the bat, and we'll talk about them later on. We'll talk about them a little more in detail. We'll bring Evie on. She'll talk about it, especially the Mississippi State game, which she's an Ole Miss lady, so that'll be to her joy. And sorry, Wayne, we'll let you vent about the Memphis loss to Southern Methodist, too, later on. I'm real sorry about that, my friend. Yeah. Happy Saturday for JJ. Sad Saturday for Wayne. Myself, I enjoyed it because I really didn't have, what do you call, a dog in the pen, as they say, or a dog in the fight. So my team is playing in a few weeks, and I'm wearing the hat to satisfy Dave Cohen when he comes on at 8:10. But let's talk about that Georgia win. JJ, it was spectacular, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was dominant from the whistle to the end whistle. Georgia just dominated on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Heck, even special teams. They had a couple good returns, set up good field position. You really can't discredit anything Georgia did. Stetson Bennett came in, looked like he'd been in this offense for 3 years. Well, he kind of had been. And then you look around, you look at some of the statistics. Look, Jarrett Stidham was sacked 3 times. He could have been sacked about 8 or 9. He threw out of 4 or 5 sacks. A couple of those were pretty intense.
Jared Stidham? Is that what you said? Jared Stidham. You mean Bo Nix?
I said Stidham. I meant Bo Nix. I'm watching the New England Patriots. And Brian Hoyer got the start and not Jared Stidham. But
you're anyway, a mess.
Bo Nix. Well, I mean, when you sit down and you're on the bench for the first 5 minutes of the show, you get a little cold. You wonder when you're going to come in and talk. So 27-6, dominating performance, 13-3. 13-3 the past 16 seasons for Georgia. It's really becoming a one-sided rivalry. UGA ran 10 more plays, just 10 more plays in Auburn. They doubled them up in offense. That's pretty impressive. That just goes to show you the amount of pressure that Georgia put on Bo Nix. Like I said, he threw out 4 or 5 of those sacks. Should have probably been intentional grounding penalties. But Georgia's dominant performance puts a lot of these haters to doubt. I picked the Dogs from the get-go from the East. There's no way they're going to lose the East. Florida struggled on, in my opinion, defense. They gave up several hundred yards to the Ole Miss Rebels, who squeaked out a win due to a missed extra point. So I'm liking the Georgia Bulldogs' chances in the East. This game really wasn't even close. I mean, Ben Cleveland and that great wall of UGA offensive linemen, they pushed open huge holes. Georgia averaged 4.5 yards a carry. This game was a blowout. Georgia really, if they had consistent offense in the second half, they probably could have put up 40 points in that game. But their defense just pushed everybody around, and that was it. It was over at halftime.
Well, it was just absolute, like you said, a tremendous performance, especially by Stetson Bennett IV, who the former walk-on, they call him the mailman, and he really delivered the mail out to his wide receivers, a la the football on Saturday. Just he looked like you said, he'd been in the offense a few years. I don't think there's any doubt that Stetson Bennett IV, the former walk-on, will be the quarterback for the rest of the year for Georgia at this particular point in time, barring an injury or he doesn't have a good game, and then Kirby Smart would have to make a decision. But
barring a short leash.
Right, but I just don't – right, a short dog leash, shall we say. So here's the thing. He was the former walk-on. He went to a junior college in Mississippi, played well there, and came back. They told him we probably wouldn't start, and you know what? He defied all odds. Just a tremendous performance. The defense was tremendous. They held Auburn to 39 yards rushing. It was fast and physical, and my unsung hero real quick will be the offensive line. When you get 7 or 8 yards in the backfield without a running back having to take a cut, you're blocking extremely well. Tremendous.
So 4.5 yards on the ground they averaged per carry. Look, Auburn only ran the ball 8 times. 8.
That really surprised me. Why?
That is why? Because they were getting dominated. They couldn't run the ball. When you're down in the blink of an eye, 10-0, you're going to have to throw the football. You got to get.
But you do have to have balance because Georgia's defense pinned their ears
the
back.
Falcons, I was mentioning what happens when you get down early. You can run the football, and we were all questioning Georgia's running game last week. It didn't look up to par. 202 yards on the ground this week. Doesn't look like it's going to be a problem down the road. I think Georgia's just like everybody else had a little bit of rust. They had to knock it off. So I think they did just that. Deep South Southern rivalry is getting to be one-sided. A lot of people can say in this rivalry is really, really rich between the two schools. I know, being on the Georgia side of it myself, I don't talk smack until anything is set in stone, and then I really don't even say anything. I just let the Dogs and the recruiting do the speaking. But that was impressive. The recruiting was on full display Saturday evening, and it showed. They were the better team.
Well, there's no doubt they were the better team, and going into Saturday night's game. 4 of the last 5 times that both teams were ranked in the top 10, Auburn had won. So that was at the graphic at the beginning of the game. So that surprised me. But Auburn, you've got to have balance.
Season.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Remember, Georgia did knock Auburn off in the SEC title in the Battle of Top 10.
Right,
so
but I just.
But in the regular season, Auburn had won all 4 of them at the top 17. Correct.
I mean, it was a stat that needed to be put up there at the beginning of the game. I mean, each team was in the top 10
Absolutely.
when they played on Saturday night, but once again, the offensive line was the unsung hero. I mean, Auburn, though, the play calling baffled me. I mean, you're only going to try to run the ball 8 times. Georgia's going to pin their ears back, and the quarterback, Bo Nix, is not going to have a chance, Wayne. I mean, he's not. I mean, how did you feel about it? You're an Auburn guy.
Well, I would say that they looked unprepared, and that Bo Nix looked like a sophomore quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he ran for his life most of the night. I mean, that defensive line was fast and physical and furious. I think they needed to run the ball a little bit more to try to become somewhat balanced because you can't just do that. You can't do that with Georgia.
Sure, you can't, but when you can't run the ball, you're just going to go 3 and out. So at that point, you have to be creative. You have to do long, short passes. And in an Auburn offense, we all know that is basically like a handoff. They will do that all the time. They'll do the RPO, they'll throw it wide, and they did it. They tried to get the ball to Seth Williams, try and make plays there. But Campbell, number 3 on UGA, the outside corner, played extremely well Saturday evening and really stepped up to the equation. He canceled out one of the best receivers in the SEC one-on-one. And when Tank Bigsby has 8 carries for 31 yards, that's your problem, TC. 8 for 31. That's
8 for 31. It was a huge problem.
A little over 3.7, 3.8 yards a carry. It's not going to do it on a timely basis. I think I hear you, though. I mean, I would have tried a little bit more before you just went and threw it 40 times. But Bo Nix did look like a sophomore quarterback. He looked like he was under distress, and last minute, late in the game, an interception that pretty much sealed the deal. And Georgia, man, they look really, really good.
Well,
right, but you know what, guys? There's a lot of season remaining here. A lot of people are predicting.
Here, let me say this: with all the Auburn talk, remember, folks, they could still bounce back and completely rebuild their team. I mean, Gus Malzahn's a really good coach. I see all this talk on social media about get off the Gus bus, folks. He's beaten Alabama when they are good. Consistently, I don't see why you'd want to get rid of that man.
That's a good point. It's been a long season.
I think he'll rebound.
It's still a long way to go. A lot can happen. There are a lot of folks think that we're going to get multiple lost champions in a Power 5 conference, but we'll see. All right, we've got Dave Cohen on the line, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, coming off a tremendous win over East Carolina, 49-28. Dave, welcome to ATL Prime Sports this evening.
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
I was very impressed by how they played that game. I watched a lot of it until I felt like I had to switch over to the Florida South Carolina game, but they were tremendous from the start. Panthers looked great.
Well, all but the first 6 seconds. Remember, we started off the game with a pick 6. I hadn't even taken a second breath or blinked my eyes the second time, and we were down 7-0. I was a little worried for about a minute, and then Cornelius Brown came right back out on the field. Georgia State was not rattled one iota, and 5-play, 75-yard drive, and before you knew it, we were only, a couple of minutes into the game, and it was 7-7 already.
Dave, assess the play of the freshman quarterback Cornelius Brown through 2 games. He's 40 of 67, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's got 21 carries for like 90 yards. At times he plays like a freshman, then at times he plays like a junior or a senior. And that's the inconsistency of the quarterback position at freshman, but I think he's carried himself very well overall.
Oh, yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. And, I was looking through my binoculars on Saturday after that pick 6, because we've talked so much on our shows about Coach Elliott's decision, and a great one that it was and is, to keep Dan Ellington in the program and hire him as an assistant coach on the offensive side of the staff. He's not a grad assistant. He's a full-time assistant coach. What does a guy like that bring to the sideline in a situation like that, where you have a young, inexperienced quarterback who throws a pick 6 seconds into the game? Dan goes right over, calms his quarterback down, and you saw what happened when he went right back out there for that. What was technically the second offensive possession of the ball game. It speaks volumes about the decision to keep Dan, because as we've said, even though he's not dressed out, he's not in a helmet, he is still in that locker room and he is still on that sideline. He's just not on the field in between the lines, but his voice and his influence and his ability to teach is still right inside the program, where he can provide the most value right now. So, that wasn't the only reason why our offense played as well as it did. But at that juncture, so very early in a ball game against an American Athletic Conference school, speaks volumes about Dan's value and Dan's input to the program and to Cornelius. I mean, Cornelius was his backup last year. These guys have played together and been in practice together and been in meetings together and been in the film room together. So, again, goes a long way to, be able to see that kind of response. and see Georgia State not get rattled after a pick six 6 seconds into the game.
Absolutely, Dave. It's like a player. He is fresh off the Georgia State roster last year. So I love your point there. Big W for the Panthers Saturday. As a play-by-play announcer, where do you see Georgia State needs to improve from week 2 to their next game?
Well, just listening to Coach Elliott's postgame on Zoom on Saturday night and then listening to his Sun Belt Conference teleconference, sounded like he was obviously very pleased with what his offense was able to do, because can't shake a stick at 49 points after you've scored 31 in an overtime loss. And seemed like he was extremely pleased equally about the defense. I mean, they held East Carolina. Now, again, when we talk about East Carolina taking nothing away from the Pirates, it's an American Athletic Conference school. Are they in the upper echelon of the American Athletic Conference? No. Wayne would know this, being up in Memphis. Wayne sees the upper echelon, some of the upper echelon in the American Athletic, because he watches the Memphis Tigers, and he sees the University of Central Florida, who we saw play East Carolina. Yeah. But at the end of the day, go ahead, Wayne.
I was saying Houston and Cincinnati and Memphis, and then Central Florida, probably, the upper part of that. And then everybody else is below. But on occasion, a team like the Green Wave or Tulsa will come up and beat somebody they're not supposed to beat.
Well, Tulsa beat UCF down in Orlando on Saturday. Yeah, that's a game they weren't supposed to win. But the point I was trying to say is that no matter where we think of East Carolina is right now, that is a program that is building to compete for the upper echelon in the American Athletic Conference. Georgia State right now is building and recruiting to compete at the upper echelon of the Sun Belt. No question, the American Athletic, maybe one step up the ladder. So a great win for Georgia State against what we'll call a team that is in a bit of a rebuilding mode in the American Athletic. But I think Coach Elliott was extremely pleased on offense, extremely pleased on defense. We held them without an offensive touchdown. All of their touchdowns were the pick six, the fake field goal, and the block punt to make up for that was their points right there. And then, so anyway, I think if he, when they sat in that meeting room either Saturday night or Sunday morning as a coaching staff and watched that film, the one area that obviously would be a little bit of a concern right now is the fact that, Tyler Snead goes in as the holder on a field goal. It's a fake field goal, and then he was one of the fastest guys in the field for them. He was a slot receiver. He runs it in for a touchdown. So special teams, if you were going to pick an area of concern right now, and I don't even underline concern. Credit where credit goes. East Carolina pulled off those two plays. They blocked the punt, they recovered, they scored the touchdown. Snead goes in there, they pull off the fake field goal. We were all in the stadium, we all saw it. So give credit where credit's due. They pulled off a nice play. Listen, if Georgia State played every game and scored 49 points, held the opponent to just 50 yards rushing, I think it would turn out to be a very, very, very good year.
No doubt about it. No doubt. You're listening to Dave Cohen here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. To me, the play of Blake Carroll, the junior linebacker from Lawrenceville, Georgia. He had nine solo tackles on Saturday, 13 total for the junior. Playing really well. See ball, get ball type of player.
Well, Blake Carroll is the type player, and because of COVID, as I was telling you guys, I haven't had a chance. Even though I'm at practice, I can't go on the field and interview players like I normally do after each and every game. So it's kind of tough. The few interviews I've been able to do have been during the week on Zoom that we use for our radio pregame. So I'm going to go on what I think and what I'm interpreting. If you're Blake Carroll, Blake was in a situation, the last couple of years where he's playing behind some pretty good players. Ed Kearney, who was a team captain last year but got injured, but had been in the program since his freshman year. This year and last year, a guy like Trajan Stevens-McQueen, the kid from Charlotte, another inside linebacker, was our leading tackler last year with 110 tackles. So Blake, coming up behind those two, again, has been in a great position, if you're a sponge, to soak it all in. You get to watch Ed Kearney and play behind Ed and compete with Ed in practice every day. And you've been also doing the same thing with guys like Trey John Stevens McQueen. So, again, Ed Kearney got hurt last year. He was a senior anyway. Like Kearney, able to move right into that position. He's learned from one of Georgia State's best. And, now it's his time to step up in that starter's role and become the kind of player, that you just described. But, the Sun Belt Conference released its players of the week. The defensive player of the week this week was Georgia State safety Antavius Lane, who also had a pick six for us on Saturday, and who had 9 tackles last games ago in the first game against Louisiana Lafayette. So when we talk about impact players, Blake Carroll has become an impact player almost from the inside of the program. Antavius Lane's a redshirt. He's still in that process, but a little bit further along.
Dave, you stole my thunder there. That was my next question. Tell us also the return of the running game. I mean, junior Destin Coates has really been impressive. 57 carries for 263 yards. This guy's a really good player. And you mentioned last week the return of the running game is what they wanted to do from Jump Street.
Might I add a top 15 running game right now, Dave? Top 15 in the nation right now.
Yeah, which again speaks volumes. I was telling somebody in a podcast yesterday, it always reminds me of the very, very, very first interview I did with Coach Elliott on the day of his hiring inside the Student Center ballroom at Georgia State. And one of the questions, or one of the topics that we talked about, was Georgia State's continued struggle to run the football. We were not a very good running team at all. There were little bits and pieces of it, like when Donald Russell, the Kentucky transfer, came in. He was a pretty good running back.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we'd kind of struggled running the football. And he was emphatic. I could still remember it. I could close my eyes and still remember it. We are going to run the football here at Georgia State. Now, it took a year or two. And Trey Barnett was the one that kind of broke through. He was the leading rusher in the Sun Belt last year. If he was Batman, Destin Coates was Robin last year. Okay, well, Batman is now gone. He graduated. So now Robin becomes Batman. And Destin Coates, who I think is 6th all-time in rushing in the history of Georgia State football, has really look in the 2 games we've had this year, he's rushed for a career-high 150. And then on 13 carries for 113 yards, as you mentioned, on Saturday against East Carolina. Is it all Destin? No. Big part of it is that offensive line. Whereas we always talked about what we needed on the offensive line and what we had to get better on the offensive line. Now you've got experience across the offensive line. Again, the only guy we lost was Hunter Atkinson, who I think I mentioned when we were on last week, and who was in Falcons rookie camp for a little bit. But the rest of those guys, from Shamarius Gilmore at left guard and Malik Sumter at center and Pat Bartlett at right guard and Travis Glover at right tackle, who's now moved over to left tackle. When they put Jonathan Bass at the right tackle. All of those guys have played. They've got multiple starts under their belt. And you better be a great running back to get to do the things that our guys have done the last 2 years if you're running behind, we'll call it a struggling offensive line or an inexperienced offensive line, but we're not. We're fortunate that, again, one of the things that Coach Elliott and his staff did when they got here, fully realized, you heard it, you've heard the term, everything, it's one in the trenches, right? So
right.
They went out and, they have, and it's an ongoing process. It's not like you do it overnight. You got to constantly recruit.
Correct.
The offensive and the defensive lines both have multiple experienced guys on there. And so it's now the fruit of your labor is producing. You know what I'm saying?
It is, absolutely. Dave, talk about producing. Georgia State has a chance to enhance its record this season. Next up is Arkansas State. They're coming off a loss to Coastal Carolina. They also lost to Memphis. That'll make Wayne smile. He hasn't smiled yet. And they beat Kansas State. So tell us about Arkansas State.
Well, it's kind of tough now because, they gave up 50-plus points on Saturday to Coastal Carolina. And, obviously, Coastal Carolina is pretty good. They're 3-0, I think, for the first time in program history since joining the Sun Belt. Arkansas State is a little, from what I can understand, and I haven't even started to do, because we don't play them until the 15th, and I just got done with East Carolina, I haven't started to really dive into that roster. But whereas we lost games out of the gate against Murray State and against Alabama, they've kind of been back and forth, and they've had some virus issues. So, that prior to playing that game with Coastal Carolina, their 2 prior games were both canceled. They were supposed to play Tulsa. I think they canceled that game because they had too many positive COVID tests at a certain position. I think it was either the offensive or defensive line. And then prior to that, they had their game against Central Arkansas, either canceled or postponed. So you're off for a few weeks. I don't know how much they were able to practice. I think the head coach, Blake Anderson, may have tested positive for COVID. So they've kind of, they've got a lot going on in Jonesboro, Arkansas right now. Hopefully we'll catch them at the right time by the time we get to October 15th. They're still good. When we first got into the league, Arkansas State, Appalachian State, Louisiana, I hate to say it, Georgia Southern, those were the 4 teams that, were sitting and battling for the top echelon of the Sun Belt. Arkansas State's dropped a little bit. I think if I remember correctly, did we put 52 on them last year in Atlanta? So, I feel pretty good right now the way Georgia State is playing. Road game, home game, road game. I feel pretty good about going to Jonesboro, Arkansas, and playing well out there against them, especially with what they've been going through, and if they're able to play.
Yeah.
No, Dave Cohen here. Go ahead, Wayne.
I think you're about to talk about it.
I was just gonna say, Wayne, I'm gonna change subjects here, Dave. Basketball season's right around the corner. Give our listeners a little preview of the Georgia State men's Panthers this season.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about it today with our sports information director about, how we think things are going to go down this year, because we were supposed to open up the season, as I told you last week, at Michigan on November the 10th. And then the decision was made across college basketball that they weren't going to open up the season. First games couldn't be until November 25. So our non-conference schedule, which included Georgia Tech, Michigan, and Kentucky, all 3 on the road. I don't know what happened to those games. Are we going to keep any of those games? Normally we play about 10 or 11 non-conference games. But now that you've backed up the schedule to November 25, how many non-conference games are we going to play? Is it going to be 3? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be, I don't know. Nobody, we don't know yet. They're still working on the schedule. The Sun Belt portion of the schedule has been released. It's really too bad that we're in what we're in, and we're not just in our normal pre-virus, situation, because I think Georgia State is absolutely loaded in men's basketball this year. We lost 2 seniors, 1 starter in Damon Wilson. Kane Williams is back. Corey Allen is back. Nelson Phillips is back.
Loaded.
You get the transfer from Memphis.
We got the Ryan
Boyce.
Yeah, Ryan Boyce is eligible immediately from Memphis. Jojo Toppin transferred in from Georgia. That's a kid that played at Norcross. Actually played against us when we were down at the Cayman Islands. Really nice kid. And then Eliel Sasemi, who's about a 6'9" Energizer Bunny rebounder inside scorer. That's going to be I'm guessing after seeing him in practice, he'll be one of the best post players, inside guys that I think I've seen in my time at Georgia State.
Well, that's too bad, Dave. They didn't get to play in my alma mater. That's, I wore this Michigan hat tonight. So you were complaining about my Southeastern Conference hat last week. I looked on the rundown today, and JJ had the basketball question. I thought, perfect, I'll put on the Michigan hat, because you might have beaten Michigan this year, but you at least can't complain about my hat anymore. You ripped me about the SEC hat. And
Well,
I'm just going to wear a different hat every week. So
I wasn't ripping you about the SEC hat. You were just breaking the rule.
Breaking the rule, Dave's rule. That's right.
Correct.
Well,
Dave's rule.
It's called the
It's the rule of
Cohen-Harmon rule.
Dave.
The Cohen-Harmon rule. I like it.
Yeah, Harmon is our old sports information director at Georgia State, one of my best friends, and we came up with all of these rules on people wearing apparel and being bandwagon jumpers and pulling for teams only because they're winning, not because that's the team that they supported where they grew up.
Well, you can't get me here. I mean, you just can't get me here this week. You might be able to get me next week, but not today.
And that's fine. You're from Michigan, right?
I went to school there a long time ago. Yes.
You're an alum of the University of Michigan.
Yes, I took most of my classes in Flint. I took some in Ann Arbor. Yes, that would make me an alum.
Okay, so
yes.
if I came to your house or your office, that diploma that says University of Michigan is hanging on the wall.
That's correct. I did a University of Michigan Flint hockey game 2 years ago. They played Georgia Tech here in Cumming. I could not believe it. I ran into a friend of mine, and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm calling the game." I said, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "My son is playing." I said, "Oh, man, we are old." So, yes. I'm looking forward to the Big Ten playing. So we'll see if they get to that point. I mean, when you look at this, the top 25, you still have, you have Louisiana Lafayette in there. And if they keep winning, I think they'll stay no matter how many Big Ten and Pac-10, 12 schools are some successful. So we have to let you go. I appreciate you coming on as always. We'll talk to you at 8:10 next Monday night.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Again, an off week, so we'll find something to talk about next week.
Oh, of course we will. There's all kinds of stuff going on at Georgia State. So, and I'll surprise you with a different hat next week. I promise you.
Have you noticed? I'm the only one not wearing a hat, so I'll need to try to remember to have one on next week.
No doubt about it. It better say Georgia State or any of the Boston teams.
You're correct. That's what the rule says.
That's what the rule says. All right. Well, as Barry Melrose would say on ESPN, cool is the rule. And thanks a lot for coming on as always, Dave.
All right. Appreciate it. You guys have a good night. And always thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That's Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers. You'll be able to check his game out on this Saturday. All right, JJ. We mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, the college football world was – I did, thank you. That was my intro. The college football world was turned upside down on Saturday. 8 top 25 teams lost, of course, automatically. Wow. If you were going to lose, but we had 5 upsets. What was the biggest surprise for you, JJ? I want, and then I'll ask Wayne. Biggest surprise.
Me, biggest surprise off the bat. I'll do a 1A and B because there was 2. One was Georgia, the domination of Georgia, but the biggest surprise to me, again, 1A Georgia's domination. 1B, Tulsa upsetting Central Florida. Gotta be.
That is pretty big.
I mean, this is pandemic football. There's a bunch of other ones, but that was my biggest one because, I mean, Central Florida's been like gravity. I mean, they just, in the AAC, they have just won everything. And here we are. You expect another 40-point blowout. Here comes Tulsa, the Golden Hurricane, one of the, I think, 11 schools with that doesn't end in an S, upsets the Golden Knights. That's got to be the biggest surprise from Saturday.
What's yours, Wayne?
Well, I was kind of surprised and I know this is kind of a weird thing for me to say, but I was really surprised at how well SMU came back against Memphis to win that game, despite having lost 2 of their key offensive players to injury. And one they lost early in the game and the other one they lost later. But to have that many players down on offense and win a game like that against Memphis is pretty impressive.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I agree 100% with you, Wayne. It is impressive. Mine, gentlemen, I can't believe I'm sitting here today saying Oklahoma is 1-2. They lost to Iowa State, who lost to a Sun Belt team. I mean,
here's a real question, folks. The Raging Cajuns, unbeaten. If they win out, let's say Iowa State, who did knock off Oklahoma, comes back and wins the Big 12, what do we have there? That would be fun.
We have chaos. But we have chaos depending upon the Big Ten teams, the Pac-12. You and I discussed this off the air, JJ. Wayne, wouldn't it be wild if we had? I'm afraid the SEC. Every SEC team is going to have one loss. I still think they'll get in there.
They may.
And if Ohio State runs the table, if Oregon runs the table, if Oklahoma State runs the table, and Clemson runs the table, we've got problems. And then you add Bedlam in if Louisiana. I doubt all this happens because I think you're going to have 2 lost conference champions this year more than one.
I think you may. Another surprising underlining note.
Yep.
Of the 5 ranked teams that were upset Friday, 4 of them were at home. That is just it is just unbelievable. I mean, the amount of shaking up. You sprayed it at the top of the show. I mean, you popped the bottles at the top of the show. You mentioned it. They just fell like flies, TC. To me, it was crazy. When I was reading it, I was like, 8? That just doesn't even sound plausible. It doesn't even sound real.
It does not. It does not.
We're in week what? I guess this is technically week 4 or 5 of the season.
5. It's week 5.
So week 5, and we've already seen that much shakeup. Telling what happens the rest of the season.
That's why I said I think we're going to have multiple lost conferences, more than one conferences. I think we could have 2 and maybe 3 conferences with 2 losses of the Power 5, and that leaves a team for maybe a Louisiana. Maybe. So we have a caller from Austin, Texas, is what I'm being shown here on the screen. Caller, welcome to ATL Prime Sports with TCJJ and our producer, Wayne.
Well, actually, this is Evie.
You know what? I figured it was, but I got a text from my producer, Evie. Thanks so much for joining the show. I'm glad you did. You came in actually at the perfect time because we were going to talk about the SEC, and I'm glad you did. Thank you for doing that, Evie. I figured it was. And I thought,
I apologize for being early. Sorry about that.
Well, do you have an Austin, Texas phone number? Because you're in Mississippi.
Well, I have an Austin, Texas phone number because I lived in Austin, Texas for about 20 years. And
that explains
and I graduated from Texas A&M, so that's even stranger.
An Aggie.
But you're an Old Miss, and you're the publisher of the Rebel Walk, and I'm so glad you joined us this evening. I appreciate it. Enjoyed our chat, by the way, on Sunday. I did. I'm going to go make you smile. I can't see a smile, but I bet I can feel you smile. The first game I'm going to discuss in the SEC, and it's part of the top 25 shakedown that we're doing, so we'll kind of combine it, is the win with Arkansas, who got thumped by Georgia finally in the second half. They beat Mississippi State, who turned around and beat LSU the week before. Evie, we have pandemic football, my friend.
We do. Life in the SEC, huh? Just means more.
What'd you think of that?
Just means more.
It just means more.
That one especially meant more. I actually was really, really, as you can imagine, being an Ole Miss person, I was very, very happy to see Arkansas snap that 20-game conference losing streak at coming at the hands of poor old Mississippi State, who I guess the week before was on top of the world, and everybody was pushing Costello for the Heisman. So I don't know. It is a crazy world. But yeah, I was really happy to see Arkansas win. A real good friend of mine, his nephew is a linebacker on the Arkansas team who actually was co-defensive player of the week this week.
Who is that, Evie?
Bumper Pool. Bumper Pool, and I think he had something insane like 20 tackles against Mississippi State.
Did you say his name was Bumper Pool?
Bumper Pool?
Oh, okay. I'm like, holy smokes.
Bumper Cars, Bumper Pool, whatever.
I believe he's number 10 on that Arkansas defense.
Yes,
Yep,
you're exactly right. They called his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might be the only one who was tackling. I don't know, but he did a phenomenal job. So I was really, really happy for that kid. And, Ole Miss, it's kind of rough in the state of Mississippi when, first week Ole Miss loses and Mississippi State knocks off LSU. It's like, it made for a long week. So this week is definitely better if you're an Ole Miss fan.
You're listening to Evie Van Pelt, publisher of the Rebel Walk, joining us on ATL Prime Sports. Evie, my name's JJ. It's a pleasure to meet you. I got a little bit of Ole Miss blood in me. Half my family went to that school in Oxford. They were down 14 points early, and Ole Miss fights back. Lane Kiffin's first victory, playing Alabama this week. What's the temperature out there in the Grove? Well, it's not filled, but what's the temperature out there in Oxford?
Well, I think it actually had been the first, speaking of conference losing streaks, I mean, it had been that was the first conference win for Ole Miss in almost a calendar year. So I think that the Rebels were pretty happy to get that win on the road at Kentucky. So that being said, you're right about the Grove being empty. There's no tailgating this coming weekend, so it'll be a little bit different than normal. But folks are excited. I mean, they're not naive. I mean, Alabama, I think, opened as a 24-point favorite. So, that's a pretty big margin.
Pretty big deficit.
But, yeah, pretty big. But, I think that one thing that I can tell you is, unlike any of the coaches in recent past, and this is not a knock on them, some of them had a lot of success, but Coach Kiffin just seems to inspire confidence in his players. And I don't know if that's just his attitude or they feel like they've got some. I mean, let's face it, the man can run an offense.
He better inspire some defense this week, or they're going to be in big trouble. I mean, Florida put a lot on them. So.
Oh well, and Kentucky had 408 yards rushing.
I know that's what I mean. It's such a bad matchup, but it is pandemic football. So, could they shock the world and beat Alabama? If they do, you're coming on next week. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
If they beat Alabama next week, you have to let me come on for as long as you're on.
I'll let you come in and you can host the show with me at that point. I mean, that's how I think it's not going to happen.
That is a deal. That is a deal I would take.
Yes, you can open up right with us and sit right with us the whole time next week if Ole Miss beats Alabama.
Okay, everybody, you heard that. Regardless. Okay. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to the game simply because, in the past, and again, 24-point spread. I mean, it is what it is. And Alabama is very, 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 very good this year, as always. And it's like Coach Kiffin said in his press conference today, they don't really have any holes. I mean, and somebody said, do you think this was funny, do you think it's an advantage, you have because you've coached under him and you kind of know how he does things? And Kiffin just said anybody who thinks it's an advantage to have coached under Nick Saban obviously doesn't realize that he's 20-0 against his former assistants, and that's no kind of advantage for. Yeah. So, that being said, I think that the Ole Miss offense does excite me. The Ole Miss defense worries me.
That's a great saying.
I mean,
right.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be, the offense knows they feel a lot of pressure. I mean, anytime you get the ball, you really need to score. So
not 3, but 6. So,
right.
The rest of the country had a bunch of upsets in the top 25. The SEC only had one. We spoke about that earlier. But the rest of the games went really according to pie. Florida beat South Carolina. LSU beat Vandy. Tennessee beat Missouri. Ole Miss squeaked over Kentucky. Do you see any upsets this week in the conference? And then we'll have to let you go.
Yeah, I think that That's hard to say. I mean, I think that the Kentucky-Tennessee game might be kind of good. Now, I mean, I know Kentucky's 0-2, but they're a really good 0-2 team. Another one that I think that's going to be interesting is A&M and Mississippi State. I mean, both coming off losses. I believe the game's in Starkville. I wouldn't be surprised if Mississippi State won that game, frankly. So, and then I guess, oh, wait, I'm a week ahead, aren't I?
You are a week ahead. It's okay. Jump ahead and predict that. That's okay. You can predict this week and 2 weeks from down the road if they play the games due to COVID-19.
It is pandemic football. That is what
That's
it's
right. We're in a pandemic right here, just trying to discuss the situation.
Yeah, no, I guess so. So really, Florida and A&M, that's at A&M in College Station. I think
that's okay.
That one. And I do think that, Arkansas and Auburn. I mean, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but Auburn didn't look very good this last
Wayne just gave you a smirk on that one. I hate to tell you, our producer just smirked because he's an Auburn guy. He's like, I can't take it 2 weeks in a row.
But you know what? I love Gus Malzahn. I mean, I liked him back when Hugh Freeze was there, and they were like BFFs and everything. And I do like Gus. I've been on the Gus bus. So, that being said, I just think it might be a better game than something.
What do you think of Georgia and Tennessee? I mean, that's your big teams against in this conference. What do you think about that?
I think that is a big one. I think Georgia wins that one though. I really do. Georgia looked pretty good. Durantano looked pretty good. I think. Don't
fill JJ's head any fuller than it is right now after last week's performance.
But I mean, Stetson Bennett, my goodness, that kid. I think he has a 55% completion. Yeah, rate. He's doing great. So there's a lot of really exciting quarterbacks to watch in this league. And I tell you what, Mac Jones. I don't know if y'all know this, but we had an article out this week for the season right now, ESPN's total QBR, which is kind of what a lot of people look at for, who the best quarterbacks are in the country, because it's kind of been indicative in the past. The top ones have gone on to be the top NFL draft picks. Well, right now, Matt Corral's sitting at number 1 and Mac Jones is sitting at number 2. And,
that's correct.
Mac Jones is sitting at number 2?
Yes, he is.
Wow. That surprises me a little bit. ESPN did a story that he was going to be a legend in Alabama. He only played a couple of games to that point, and he had lost to every ranked team he played except for that lid that's on my head, Michigan. Of course, that was a memory that I still have from the loss on New Year's Day last year. But that's surprising that he's jumped that far. Yes. So, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I just have the utmost respect from Alabama. I mean, and sure.
what they do there with their players. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see a battle of two really good quarterbacks. I mean, Matt Corral, that being said, Matt Corral was down. I think he had a total QBR last year in the 50s. I mean, this is out of 100, so that's like an F. And I think right now he's at, 95 or something. So, he's Kiffin and Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator, have really, really, really helped him.
Well, Evie, we're all set. Thanks for coming on this evening. I'll tell you what, this is what we'll do. If Ole Miss comes on, you come on at 8 Eastern. If Ole Miss loses, you come back on at 8:40 Eastern, and we'll still talk about it next week. Is that a deal?
We'll talk about the Rebels.
That is a deal, and I appreciate y'all having me and putting up with my earliness. So thank you so much.
No problem. The rest of the SEC, we always talk about it. We'll see if we get a shake 'em up Saturday in the SEC. If Tennessee wins, JJ will now be wearing that gaudy orange, as they say on the blind side.
I'll be sick next week if Tennessee gets that win. Oh, or as an Ole Miss alum would say, I ain't wearing that gaudy orange.
Right, I just said that. Yep, I'm not wearing that gaudy orange in that famous movie, The Blind Side. That's right, Michael. I'm not wearing that gaudy orange. So
not wearing it. That's
I won't do it.
Better go to Ole Miss.
It's not in my color wheel.
That's exactly right. I don't look very good in orange. So.
Well, Evie, thanks so much. Hopefully next week you can come on camera with us, and especially if Ole Miss wins, you better, because you're gonna be hosting this show along with myself.
I'm going to be
Hotty toddy.
So thank you very much. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy. Take care. That was Evie Van Pelt, publisher of the Rebel Walk here on ATL Prime Sports. She'll join us next week at 8:40. I don't think Alabama's going to win, so I'll say 8:40, and Dave Cohen will join us at 8:10. All right, let's shift gears. Let's go from football to baseball. I was wrong.
Hey, you were wrong.
I'm not Fonzarelli. I can say it. I'm not the Fonz. I was wrong. I was fooled. I was an absolute moron to pick the Reds. I'll say it right now. The 212 batting average. The 212 batting average came to bite me in the kabasca.
It did.
I will not let this happen this time. The Marlins come in with a 203 postseason batting average and a team ERA of 0.50 because they swept the Cubs. The Braves team ERA is a big, fat goose egg 0. So I will pick Atlanta to win this series in 4 games. JJ, go ahead.
I got Atlanta in 4. Honestly, as a Braves fan, you've seen this team all year. To me, in the back of your head, in a series that's kind of scary, you've seen the team all year round. In the back of my head, as a fan, folks, I picture 1997. Very similar situation. People thought the Braves were going to walk into the World Series, but the Marlins came into play and beat them in 7 or 6, actually.
Are you picking Florida this time around?
I'm picking the Braves, but it's in the back of my head.
I bet it is.
But here's why. Here's why it's in the back of my head. Simply because, again, the Braves were huge favorites in 97. They lose. Very similar type situation. We got 0 goose egg as a pitcher, Max Farid, Ian Anderson, Kyle Wright. Looks like we got our 1, 2, 3. So very similar situation. But the Braves just score so many runs against this Marlins pitching staff. They've done it year after year after year. They won 6 out of 10 this week. I'm picking the Braves 4 as well. And they scored 29 runs, a National League record against this team. I think the Braves will score enough runs to win the series.
Wayne, who do you have winning? Who do you have winning it?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and go with the Braves simply because I'm not too much a fan of Miami.
Amen.
You know what? Here's another thing. I'm going to plant this seed in your head, JJ, since you're talking about ghosts and getting haunted and all that stuff. The ghost of Derek Jeter. Now, he thumped the Braves as a player.
No.
Does he come in and spoil them as the CEO of the Marlins? Because he took it to him as a player for the Yankees in his stellar Hall of Fame career. Does he stick it to him as the CEO of the Marlins? He's not playing, thank goodness for Braves fans. But
he could probably still get out there and get a couple hits.
You might want to call him up and have him play shortstop for a game this series. Now, I mean, in all seriousness, this is a bitter rivalry between the Braves and Marlins.
Absolutely.
It is. They don't like each other. With the Urena situation on the mound, I still think it's 4 games. I think Florida takes a game. I think they take the game 3, the Kyle Wright game, because we all know they're going with Max Fried and Ian Anderson. And they were spectacular last series, were they not, JJ? They were spectacular.
Well, we hadn't seen a lefty do what Ian Anderson did since that divisional series win in 2001. That was Tom Glavine. So unbelievable performance. I mentioned it last week. I think they made the corner at the end of the season. We thought we had one guy. Then Ian Anderson won 3 straight starts. And then this guy, Kyle Wright, won 2 or 3 in a row. And we go, well, hey, if you got a 3-headed horse, you can win a lot of series. Now, what the question is Brian Snitker going to be willing to pull the trigger and start a guy 2, maybe 2.5 times as a reliever or something like Garrett Cole did for the championship run last year? He wasn't put in, remember, and the Nationals won the game. But maybe that's what's setting up like this. I like the Braves in this series. Ozuna against his team that drafted him. This should be fun. You mentioned the Urena versus Acuna rivalry. These teams don't like each other, and you add a postseason berth to it. This should be a fun series, but I think the Braves will outscore, and Farid and Ian Anderson are going to outpitch, and that's it.
The series will not be played in Atlanta or Miami. It'll be played in Arlington Stadium with a new Texas Rangers ballpark, which is really weird. The American League, the National League teams are playing in an American League ballpark. The American League teams are playing in a National League ballpark. The American League teams, in the National League, you can go watch them play in Texas, but you can't go watch the Dodgers and Padres play. You can't watch them play. That just doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. You just can't do it. And I will say this, the Braves caught a huge break because normally they'd be playing the San Diego Padres. If you're going 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, they caught a huge break, and now the Dodgers will play the Padres instead of the Braves playing them. I think that's another huge break for Atlanta. Their bullpen, like you said, has been spectacular. Will Smith, Mark Melancon, and Curtis Martin. We could go on and on about this pen. It's a spectacular one. Guys, we'll see. Series starts later on this week. We'll see what happens. So let's go ahead and go to our famous pick 6. We did pick the Braves series already. That was our bonus pick. Let's go ahead and go around the horn. Wayne, Tennessee and at Georgia. Georgia's a 13-point favorite. Who do you have?
Georgia was too impressive. I'm going to have to pick Georgia, and I think they'll cover.
JJ?
I'm much along the lines of Wayne. This is a lot of points for a rivalry game. Georgia is at home, and we know we've talked about it. You may have seen the article. There may have been a couple more fans than 21% there. They may do the same. I like Georgia at home by at least 2 touchdowns. I think they'll cover that spread.
I think there were, 40,000 there last week? I think there'll be 45,000 this week. And old Rocky Top's going to get stumped by more than 13. I've got Georgia, too. Let's go on our next one. Miami and Clemson. Wayne, you go first. I'm sorry. Clemson's a 13.5-point favorite. Or no, 15.5-point favorite. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Wayne.
I'm going to take Clemson in that, but I do not think they're going to cover. I think they'll win by less than a touchdown.
Okay. What about you, JJ?
Close one. This rivalry hasn't been very close in the last couple of years. I think Miami will play them close, but I don't think it's 15.5. I think they'll lose maybe by 17. I think Clemson will pull away late in the game. So I'm saying Clemson to cover the 15.5. I'll say somewhere 17 points, like a 37 to 20 game.
No, I think Clemson wins by 3 touchdowns. They're just very impressive. They're really good. There's no Cain and Abel in this series. Sorry, at all. Let's go to the Red River rivalry. Wayne, number 22, Texas 2-1 at 1-2, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a 3-point favorite. The game being played in Dallas, as always.
Yeah, I'm going to take Oklahoma there, and I'm going to take them to cover. Texas, even though I picked Texas at the beginning of this year to be in the Final Four, they have not impressed me at all. So I'm taking Oklahoma to cover.
I like it.
Wayne, I'm with
Go
you.
ahead, Jay.
Wayne,
Go ahead,
I'm with
JJ.
you. Spencer Rattler has impressed me. He is all the hype and then some. The guy can throw the ball in any part of the field, make any throw. I like Oklahoma to pull the upset.
That's not an upset. They're the favorite.
Yeah.
Well,
so anyway,
in terms of ranking, sure they're the favorites, but in terms of ranking, Texas is the ranked team going into the matchup. That's what I mean, folks.
Yeah.
You're correct, my friend. I'm going to go ahead and take. I can't see. Yeah. You know what? I can't see Oklahoma going 1-3, but this is pandemic football. So you know what? The game's in Dallas. I've got Texas to cover. I'm gonna say we have Bedlam in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma goes to 1-3. I've got Texas to win it. All right, Florida at Texas A&M. Number 4, Florida at 21, Texas A&M. Florida's a 6.5-point favorite. Wayne, who do you have?
I'm taking Florida to cover simply because Florida's quarterback is Texas big. I don't know if you notice how tall that dude
He's a
is.
stud. Trask is an absolute stud.
Trask a task for any defensive coordinator.
Yes.
But I will take the points in the Aggies. I'm going to go with the Aggies to cover. I think Florida wins by a field goal on the road.
All right.
I'll take cover. I think Florida's going to cover. Texas A&M's got problems on defense. We've seen it. You're
right.
Now I've got A&M to cover that game. I mean, excuse me, Florida to cover it with no problem. Let's go to our last game.
Here's my last.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
I know. I know we're running short. Here's my
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
On that. Jimbo Fisher's coaching for his job, possibly.
No
I think
way.
That has a lot to do with it.
No
There's a
way.
lot of barking. There's a lot of barking out
Do
there.
you know how much they're
There's
paying him a year? Do you know how much they owe him? I'll tell you
know
what.
how much the alumni would pay to get him out of there in a
I will drive to your house and cook you and your beautiful wife. And well, you can't. Your baby can't eat the steak, but I will cook you and your beautiful wife a steak in your house. I will grill it. I will pay for it. I'll have Wayne come to Atlanta and stay with. He can stay at my house with my family, and he can watch this shindig. I'll bring my wife. Better yet, Wayne can bring his. We'll all get together. It'll be the tab will be on me. If Jimbo Fisher gets fired at the end of the year, I think there's not a ghost chance in hell of it happening. They owe him way too much money.
I thought it was egregious too, but they're all opinions. It's nothing that holds water yet. But you go to 1-2 in this SEC again.
Yep.
People are going to be upset. That's Kevin Sumlin water. That's all I'm going to say. That's Kevin Sumlin
You're right.
water. But
all right,
but
we got to get going. I'm sorry. Number 8 UNC at number 19 Virginia Tech. UNC is a 5.5-point favorite, and the way they played Wayne last week, they better play a lot better than they did against Boston College because they squeaked it out.
Well, I'm going to take UNC over Virginia Tech, but for a weird reason. Virginia Tech used to be in the same conference as Memphis when Memphis was in the Metro Conference, and the Hokies hurt Memphis too many times, and so I cannot ever be for Virginia Tech.
That's personal reasons. Do you have North Carolina covering? I'm sorry.
Yeah, North Carolina to cover.
I like it. Personal reasons, personal vendetta against Vod Tech. JJ, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sometimes those are the best picks, but I'm taking
They are.
the Hokies in Blacksburg. They play well at home. Fuentes has a good program up there. They're 2-0. I like the Hokies at home.
This is the hardest game for me to pick on the docket by far. It's even tougher than Texas and Oklahoma. I'm going to take Virginia Tech. I think North Carolina wins by 4.5. Or they can't win by 4.5. Duh. But I think they'll win by 4 or 5. I think, hell, I met in the middle. It really doesn't matter. The point is they'll win by 4 or 5. So, Wayne, did you write all these down to see who's right next week? You know who we all have.
Right.
And let's see who can wear the bragging hat for 1 week. All right, our last game on the dock.
So right now, it's Wayne and I, because we only got 1 pick 6 in last week, and Wayne and I got the Braves. So we got the hat right now, Wayne.
Right. That's it. That was our last game on the docket, guys. I really had a lot of fun this evening. I really did. It was a good time. Do we have one more game? Oh, we do have one more game, but geez, I'm a mess. The Panthers against the Falcons. The Falcons are a 3.5-point favorite. Golly, I know I had one more game. I'm on the blink. Wayne, go ahead and tell what you had, my friend.
It's easy to forget about the Falcons, especially this year.
That's probably why I forgot.
Well, I'm gonna have to pick the Falcons, and I'm gonna pick them to cover because that's just an emotional pick.
Good golly, I can't wait for JJ's pick. Another gut-wrenching emotional pick out of Wayne. Go ahead, JJ.
Well, you know what? I think the Falcons could very well be 0-4 traveling into that week, and I am going to take for some odd reason, I'm going to take the Falcons to lose and lose big. So I'm going with the Panthers.
You're just, you know what? Look, we've seen it once. We've seen it twice. We're not going to see it 3 times. The Falcons will have fans in the stands. Hopefully they'll have as many fans as Georgia had in Oklahoma and whoever else is breaking the rules out there, because they're breaking them. I've got the Falcons to win, but only to win. You know what? They're only going to win by a field goal. Well, you know what? I got the Falcons to win by 4. Some funky play will end up. It's a funky COVID-19 season. You know what? The funky Cole Medina, the Falcons win it by 4, and that's all I've got, folks. I'll take the Falcons. So it's been a fun show, guys. It really has.
Panthers in the points. Falcons win by 3. That's what I want.
All right, I'll take the funky Cole Medina Falcons. All right, so you know what, guys? It's been a lot of fun this evening. It's been a lot of laughs.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, JJ, on the other side of the ATL. If I really got to come over and cook this steak, I really am going to regret it. Wayne, we've invited you and your wife. You can come stay at my place. JJ's got a baby up half the night. You're not going to want to stay there. So,
but the room's available. The room's available.
But the room's available. Yes, you and your lovely wife can stay, and the stakes will be on me, and my wife will slap me in the back of the head for making a stupid bet, and we'll all move on. It must be the Michigan hat that's caused me to do all this delirious stuff this evening. So for Wayne in Memphis, for JJ in the ATL, for me on the other side of the ATL, have a great week. We'll talk to you next week at 8. We'll talk to you next week.
Can I get one?
See you next week,
yes,
folks.
sir. You
Can
want
I
to get you one? You get you one, Wayne. What is it?
Get it, Wayne. Get you one.
I can't do the little thing. I don't know what it is.
There it is. There it is.
What's the guy
Next
on
week,
the
folks.
NFL Network that started doing all this dancing yesterday? I don't know what it was. So,
We'll see
all
you
right,
next
what's your
week,
get
folks.
you one, JJ? I'm sorry.
Hey, get you one. We'll see you next week, folks. Had fun.